In this episode, I'm going to show how to get crystal clear views to the outside when doing interior real estate photography. But this is going to go beyond just your standard window pulls, because what I'm going to show is how to deal with some big problem areas, especially when we have disparate lighting between multiple window panes, which is very common, for instance, when you have screens in some of those windows and you don't in others. Very common problem that's easy enough to solve. We're going to take a look at the whole thing from top to bottom. We're going to do all of this in Photoshop, which would be done when we perform our blending, whether you're using HDR, whether you're using Flambient. We're going to start out though by showing what it looked like before, and this is just an ambient shot. Obviously, this would be very difficult then to work with an ambient bracket to get some HDR. That's why I prefer to use Flash, and you can see by just introducing Flash, immediately we get a lot of the color correction, and we're starting to get some views to the outside, but it's not enough. Now this then was a typical two-sided composite, and that's what this other frame is here, where I just edited myself out with this one. So now I've got an even flash shot with also a flash that was in this far room. Now it's time to do the flambient blending, where I did some 50-50 flambient blending and some selective flambient here. And you can see now this took care of my exposure. In fact, this window is coming through just fine over here, but this is where we need the window pull. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this technique using the flambient method and also the standard window pulls, which I'll also cover in this episode, then I'd encourage you to take a look at my course on professional interior photography. And that's just part of my course series that I have on doing real estate photography and videography. And I have links to all that down in the description of this video. But moving along here then, we can see that up here, this is a group where I added my window pulls, and sure enough, everything looks pretty good. Now, a couple of the things I did before we get to the windows, just so you see, is that yeah, I did desaturate the ceiling a little bit, really didn't need it, just a practice that I normally do. And there was a pillow missing here. The owner's dog actually ran off with it, so I just photoshopped one in there by doing a mirror thing of this. This then, when we go to the finished, this is what it would look like when we get to the post-processing portion of the workflow that I teach in the courses, and this is where then we would export this. I did it in Photoshop just so we have everything here together, but that's all that that is. But let's back up here. Let's turn everything off until we get down to the windows. Now the windows, you'll see, has in here another section called adjustment layers. And if we turn that off, we can see that this is solving the problem, and what I want to show especially in this episode, of this disparate lighting. We can see that without these adjustments that I want to make, that over here and over here, those windows are very bright. And that's because these had screens in them, and this is also just a type of treated window. So here we've got a disparity in light. It just doesn't look quite right for those exposures. So what these are though, these are the standard darken mode window pulls. If I disable, for instance, the mask on this one, we can see that I was shedding a flash over here to overexpose that. For instance, if that was in normal mode, we can see I'm doing that to get that darken mode window pull. You've probably seen me do this before, once again, on numerous episodes here on this channel, and also once again, that's in the course. But if I take this, we'll put that back into darken mode, then once again, it's automatically there. We don't have to do cutting in all these various windows. So once we did that, and there was just a little bit of a reflection still over here, and that's why I did two window pulls, two different angles. But now we need to add this adjustment in here to where we can really pump this up and even out the exposure. So this is the trick to do that. Let's turn off those adjustment layers and let's start fresh. What you would do is go above your window pulls right here. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so we can really see what's going on. Now you can already see it's kind of hazy on the horizon anyway, so we're going to have some of that, but we can really improve this view. The next thing is you want to grab the object selection tool. So you go up here, hold down until you see the menu, and then you want to make sure you have the object selection tool. You want to select this up here, which this is the add to selection. That way you can do multiple windows at the same time. Make sure the mode is in lasso, And very importantly here is that Sample All Layers is selected. Now with that object selection tool, what I'm going to do is then draw a lasso just roughly. Look, I'm going across the window frame, down here across these houses, anywhere along there. When I release and close it, it does a pretty good job, and you can see here, of selecting within that window frame. Now, some of the trees weren't really selected, some of that, we can refine that later. But we also have this window here to take care of, so we'll do the same thing. Well, once again, with this object selection tool, we'll draw a rough lasso around this area, and it did a pretty good job of selecting things here. The next thing we want to do is to add a curves adjustment layer. So with this selection active, when we select a curves adjustment layer or any other adjustment layer, it'll automatically place a mask on it for us. So we want to go up to Layer, and then New Adjustment Layer, and then to Curves. And you could name it whatever you'd like. So in here, what we'd like to do is bring down the highlights, and there's a couple ways to do that. Let's zoom out now so we can get a good view of what we're doing, and I'll just move this off to the side. We're right about here. Now with this, I can sample in here where those highlights are that really need to be brought down, but it's going to go really high. But over here, we can see that we're seeing a lot of highlights already on this portion of the histogram. So what I would do is just take the dot that comes up here and then start dragging that down. Now you can drag it down to wherever you feel it's comfortable. Now you can see that we're starting to match. This window is matching these over here really well, but this one isn't. We're going to fix that. So if we turn the layer on and off, we can see the difference. This is without that curves layer, this is with it. So I'm happy with that adjustment so far. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to fix this one, and to do that is simple. Let's take that layer that we have and we'll duplicate it. I'm going to do Control J, which you can also on a Mac do Command J, and that duplicates that layer. Then on this new curves layer, I'm going to get rid of this side here out of the mask. So on the mask, I'm going to select the marquee tool. You can do it a number of different ways, but I'm just going to delete that whole selection. I'll do Control D or Command D on a Mac to deselect. So now I've got this layer here, this extra curves layer, to really take care of anything over here. And you can see it already kind of has. If I turn this off and on, you can see that that's pretty much taken care of now evening that out. If I zoom out here, you can see that looks pretty good. If I wanted to, I could still strengthen it further. For instance, here I brought it down a little bit more. If I go too much, you don't have to readjust it here. You could also change the opacity of the layer down to where you feel that looks good. You can also then erase, for instance, if I didn't want this house in the distance to be that dark, I might do something else with it. But there's really no need to do it for this. So that takes care of now the adjustment for the disparity in light between these windows. But if we go to our finished shot, you'll notice that they really got pumped up. That's the next step that I'd like to show. What we're going to do is to use a levels layer to make this happen, but we're going to take advantage of that object selection tool that uses AI to figure out where things should be. So what we're going to do is above our curves layer here, I'm going to once again grab this object selection tool. And just like before, make sure that it's in Add to Selection with this checked, and that it's in Lasso mode and Sample All Layers. And then what we can do is just roughly draw that lasso around those various windows. And you can see I missed some, but it filled it in just nice. I can then do that as much as I want to these other windows. I'll go way down here, for instance, and selected that just real nice. I'll go down here and select this. And you can see I can do this to each of these windows. And that's why I like to have that Add to Selection checked, because then I can just keep going like this and I don't have to try it, then select, try it, then select. And you can see now I've got all those windows selected. So now I can add a levels adjustment with this masked. All that I do then is go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and then to Levels. Name it whatever you like. In the Levels layer, there's this little slider in the middle, and if you move it to the right, it's going to darken everything. So I'm just going to Move that to the right just ever so slightly, and you can see that's really starting to rich things up. Now it also richened up this house over here, so you probably want to erase that out of the mask. I could take the object selection tool, for instance, and I could go around that house. It selected it, and I could hit delete, and that's out of there. But let's zoom out and let's see how things look overall. So if we take a look at the levels adjustment layer that was added, if I turn it off, you can see this is what it looked like before, this is with it on. But if we take a look also at removing our curves layers where we started, this is where the initial window poles were. And this was good for a window pole, if only though these windows were even as far as their exposure. Once again, there were screens here, there was a screen here, these didn't have it, and this was a treated window. So a completely different glass giving us different results. Now you could also take multiple window poles with different exposures. In this case, it's like I knew I could fix this easy enough in post, so that's what I did here. So after adding my window poles, which were once again these layers down here with flash shots, which by the way you don't have to do in Flambit, you can do in HDR, and I teach that in my expert editing course. And then we added 2 curves layers to take care of the light disparity, and then we added a levels layer to really pump things up, and then when it was all said and done, this is what it looked like. But let's take this even further. Let's zoom in here and let's take a look at another problem here. Now you'll see there are other reflections in here, and those reflections are almost impossible to remove because if we take a look at a shot without any flash but that exposure, you can see there are some reflections here still. This was from a window inside, so was this right here. Some of those things you can't get rid of with flash, but we can over here in Photoshop, as well as these other reflections that are showing up in the glass that are coming from using flash. What we're going to do is use another little bit of AI, very simple using the remove tool. I'm going to go up to the very top up here or wherever you'd like before you do your final post-processing. And what we're going to do is just add a new layer. So I'm just going to go to Layer and then New Layer. And you don't have to do anything special to it. This is just a blank layer. Once we have that, and that's on top of everything we're working on, grab the remove tool, which is over here. If you don't see it, you hold down and then you'll see all the different little healing brushes and whatnot. And what we want is the remove tool. Now with that, make sure that generative AI is off. You want sample all layers turned on and uncheck remove after each stroke. Then what you can do is take this and you can go around these little areas. And sometimes if you do it like that and you release, it noticed, it filled it in. It figured out what was supposed to be there. Then you go to these various areas that you want to remove and you just go over these with the remove tool. And when you're ready, you can click the checkbox up here or press enter on your keyboard. And that's then when the remove tool will go out and do its thing, come back and look at that. It's all taken care of. Now the nice thing was this was done on just this layer. So I can turn this layer off and on and see how that looked. And it did a pretty good job of filling that in. Using these techniques, you can not only get window pulls in there fast by using flash in the darken mode technique, but you can take full control then of how well they look and to what extent you'd like to really pump up those views.